If you have followed the advice of people like Gary Vaynerchuk or Alex Hormozy, there's a really good chance, just like me, you ended up in the dark side of content creation. Constantly you're putting out 2 to 3 pieces of content every single day. You wake up checking your phone, waiting for more views to happen, more likes, more business, and ultimately nothing happens. You feel like you're creating content and dumping it into the abyss. I've been there. At one point, it felt like nothing I created actually made any difference, and that was the whole reason I started making content. But before I gave up, I happened to stumble across an interview with a man named Rick Rubin, who's on the Joe Rogan podcast. The man that is behind the scenes some of the greatest creators to ever live. He has helped produce songs like Walk This Way with Run DMC and Aerosmith. He's worked with Red Hot Chili Peppers. He's worked with Kendrick Lamar. You name it, he's been in the room of some of the best of the best. And I heard him talk about his newest book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being. And in this book, he details out the creative process that you could take to make content that actually matters, to become an artist, put out the best possible thing you can, and actually have it inspire other people. When I was looking at this interview with Rick Rubin, I thought if anybody can help me get out of this creating and throwing out content into the abyss, it's probably Rick Rubin. So as I read the book, I found myself getting inspired. I found myself almost given a blueprint to how I could be a better creator. And if you're someone that's making content on YouTube, if you're making content anywhere, this video is going to help you become a better creator and actually make content that you care about and you feel like that makes a difference. And so we're going to be covering 4 key takeaways that I got from the book itself. The first is finding the source of creativity. He talks about this abundance of creativity that we have at our fingertips, but maybe we just didn't know that was there. The second is greatness, success, and doubt. How we can strive to be great, find success, but ultimately overcome that self-doubt that, by the way, we all ended up going through. Thirdly, being the creator. How can you not only become, and that's originally what I had wrote, right? I said becoming the creator, but in his own words, you don't try to become a creator or an artist, you just are. You be that person. So being the creator, how should we act and operate on a day-to-day basis to be a better creator? And the actual creative process that he walks through in the book, but I actually used to create this video. At the very end, I'm gonna give you my 2 cents on, did this process work for me? Does it work? And ultimately, can you use it to be a better digital entrepreneur? Hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Now, let's jump in. The source of creativity. Now, throughout the book, he constantly talks about the source. It's an external thing that ultimately we can tap in at any moment to be able to get inspiration. And what I find most interesting to Rick Rubin, if you watch any of his interviews, and in fact, he even before the interview begins, he says, hey, can we meditate really quick?
Let's take a couple of breaths.
Okay.
Thankful to be here. All good.
Very.
He brings spirituality to art. And there's something that he says that I wanted to share with you. He says the practice of spirituality is the way of looking at the world where you are not alone. The energy around you can be harnessed to elevate your work. You are a part of a world with immense possibilities. We have to remember that there is endless possibilities out there so long as we are tuned into it. And this is where the source comes into play. He says about the source, this content does not come from within us. The source of creation is out there, an exhaustible offer that is always available. Again, the source being external. He says again, the source makes available, the filter distills, and the vessel receives. So with knowing that there's an endless amount of information out there, we should have an abundant mindset. We all hear about the abundant mindset, but I want you to show you from his own words what he means. A river of material flows through us. When we share our work and our ideas, they are replenished. If we block the flow by holding all inside, the river cannot run, and now ideas are slow to appear. Have you ever had a creative rut before? I don't know what to create next. I don't know what to do next. And yes, I know that Instagram is telling me I need to create more reels. And yes, I see this other creator doing this and maybe I should do something like that. But your own inspiration doesn't hit anymore. Sometimes it's because we get in our own way of creating the content, not allowing that abundant mindset to take over and us getting in the way of the idea coming to fruition. The funny thing about art is that oftentimes creation is really about decoding. So he says here, art is an act of decoding. We receive intelligence from the source, interpret it through the language of our chosen craft. So by that, once again, it could be through our business. It could be a content creator on YouTube. It could be a musician, whatever. Our lack of skill influences our ability to best articulate the translation. part of the issue sometimes that we have is that we have a vision for what we want to create. We just don't know how to do it. Sometimes the skill isn't there, so we don't even start. There's no other way to get better at your craft than to try. And by the way, again, I've been there too. Once you tap in, it's your job to bring the idea to fruition, because only you and your unique voice can make that happen. So that was the first section, tapping into the source. Now, being the creator, what does it mean to be a creator? One of the things that I found incredibly interesting about the book is he talks about being a creator. And one of the things I found myself saying a lot is I'm not a good creator. And this is what he says about that. It makes no sense to say that you're not good at it. That's like saying I'm not good at being a monk. You're either living as a monk or you're not. So how do you know that like you're good at creation? He says here, anything that allows the audience to access how you see the world is accurate, even if the information is wrong. Again, a lot of times we have this fear of what if I put this out? What if I put out my 2 cents on this or my opinion on this and then it comes back and people are really upset about it? What if people don't understand it? And again, based on what he says here is that even if the information is wrong, as long as it's true to you and you did your job of translating what you got from the source, what your inspiration was, and bringing it to life, then it's worth it. The art of being a creator is simply to take from the source, translate it so other people can understand, decode whatever inspiration you are having, and bring it to life. Once you hit that publish button, it's no longer yours. It's everybody else's. So in order to continue to be a great creator, you have to submerge yourself with great art. This applies to every single choice we make, by the way, as creators, not just with art, but with our friends we choose, the conversations we have, and even the thoughts that we reflect on. The objective is not to learn or mimic greatness. It's to be able to have a calibration for what's good or not. But here's the problem. When you try to mimic other people, where is your voice come into play? What is your point of view? Where is your style of doing it coming into play? It's not, because you're just simply mimicking others. The purpose of being around people that are making really good content, picking their brains, whatever, is also so you can get feedback that you can trust. I was recently with this guy, Evan Carmichael, and I was having a conversation. I said, man, I feel like my content sucks. You know what he said back to me? It does. So what did I do? I went back to the drawing board, try to figure out how I can make better content, how I can bring my ideas better to life. And that wouldn't have happened if you're surrounding yourself with people that constantly are telling you, hey, you're doing good. And the final note in the book was ignore the rules. Ignoring the rules as a creator. Everyone has these different rules of what you have to or should be doing online in terms of content creation, and you have to follow them. But the best of the best break those rules. For example, Mr. Beast. He kind of broke all the rules, and now look at where he's at. In fact, even in the terms of business, he's breaking all the rules. He says, hey, I'm not going to buy the Lamborghinis. I'm not buying a new house. I'm not doing all this. I'm literally going to take the money that allows me to create. I'm going to roll it in back into my being able to create. And I'm going to do more of it, more of it, and more of it, and more of it. He's breaking all the rules. And as a result, his ideas actually come to life. What Rick Rubin says about rules is rules direct us to average behaviors. The goal is not to fit in. Instead of sounding like others, value your own voice, develop it, and cherish it. This does not mean you shouldn't learn from others. It's not what he's saying. What he is saying, though, is if you have something unique about you, other people are telling you, hey, maybe you need to tone this down, or maybe you should do this. If it gets in the way of your own voice, maybe you shouldn't do it. Maybe you shouldn't listen to those rules. Do your best to ensure that your ideas, your inspiration comes to life. So now let's talk about greatness, success, and self-doubt. We make it being content for no other purpose than to creating our version of the beautiful thing that we see from the source, bringing all of ourselves to a specific project. Focusing on the results will get it in the way of the greatness. If you're constantly focused on the end result, hey, maybe this will get me 1 million views, or maybe this will bring up business, you're going to get in the way of creating the best you possibly can. You'll rush certain things. To be a great creator, detach from the outcome, do the best you can to bring what you're trying to do to life. One of the things he mentioned in here, and again, it hit me like a ton of bricks. He says, a lot of people like to say, I don't like it, but maybe someone else will. That's a cop-out. A cop-out that, by the way, I've done myself. So what is success? He says, if we can tune into the idea of making things and sharing them without being attached to the outcome, the work is more likely to arrive at its truest form. How close can you make what you initially see in your mind come to life? That is success. That you actually like what you did. You hear stories about like Kanye West. There's a story where Dave Chappelle shares where Kanye West gets in the car with Dave Chappelle and he's listening to Kanye's music. That's a very Kanye thing to do, right? And that's kind of the goal. Can you create something that you are actually proud of? And one of the problems that we do as creators sometimes is we listen to others and say, you should not create for you should create for your audience. Well, that's a really good way to burn out. And I know that from experience. Self-doubt. Sometimes the desire to share our work isn't as strong as the desire to protect ourselves. He says, we're not obligated to follow a calling because we have a talent or a skill. We're blessed to create. It's a privilege. We're not being ordered to do this. So one of the things I kind of had to realize as well to get out of this creative rut that I was in was nobody said I have to create anything. I could just stop creating content. I don't have to do this. It's a privilege. So how do we actually remove self-doubt? He says it's helpful to see that the piece we're working on as an experiment. Whatever the result, we will receive useful information for the next one. Looking at every single piece of content you put out as an experiment. Hey, I'm putting this out just to simply see, did I improve here? Is this going to be received a certain way? If it falls flat, guess what? You're on to the next one. Your desire to create must be stronger than your fear of it. Doubting the work versus doubting yourself. You have to know the difference because doubting yourself may sound like this. I don't know if I'm good enough to be able to actually do this. That is doubting yourself, but doubting the work is okay. I don't know if this video, this offer, my business is good enough. That's doubting the work, and that's what it takes to actually get to the point of being really good. So doubt the work, don't doubt yourself. So now for the creative process. So the first stage of the creative process is relatively simple, but it does require what I found to be some discipline. So the first thing is seeds. It's the seeding phase. It's collecting information in different places, and so that way you can, get enough inspiration to gather. So how did I know if it's good enough to be able to be a seed? Maybe you're listening to a podcast, you don't agree with somebody says, and you find yourself in your car talking, that's a seed, for example. He mentions again about point of view. The personal is what makes art matter. Our point of view, not our drawing skills or musical veracity or ability to tell a story. None of that actually matters. A point of view is different from having a point. Share your point of view. So phase 2, experimentation. If we try 10 experiments and none of them work, we have a choice. We can take it personally and think of ourselves as a failure and question our ability to solve the problem, or we can recognize we've ruled 10 ways that don't work, bring us much closer to the solution. The one upside, right, to how much content these days that we put out is a lot of it's experimental. If you look at it that way. I was looking at it like, no, this is the end all be all. But if you look at every piece of content you put out, let's say you're up to 100 videos on YouTube, every single video is an experiment. But you got to go back and learn the lessons. You got to go back and tweak certain things. You may even have to go to your audience and ask them, hey, what do you think about this? Experimenting is incredibly important. So phase 3 is crafting. It's the point of the journey where actually a lot of people struggle to carry on. This is where we cement the structure, we cut things away, and we set a deadline. Hey, this is when we're going to launch this. There's no rule to how long a song should be, or for us in the case of YouTube, there's no rule that you should follow on how long a certain thing should be. The game is how much can you remove and it still have its core of what you're trying to say. So in this phase of crafting, a lot of it is not what you can add, but it's more so what you can take away. It's also about creating the structure and almost allowing, again, through the experimentation phase, it to decide on where you actually want it to be. Here's the number one question we have to ask ourselves, though, when it comes to the crafting phase, which is, when do we know the work is done? You can edit, and I know people like this. They edit and edit, or they work on a speech, or they work on something forever and ever, and it's never done. So how do you know when it's done? He says, the finished piece, examine to ensure it meets our highest standards. You are the only audience that matters, so you determine when it's done. The work is done when you feel it is. This is drastically different than everything we were told about content creation as digital entrepreneurs. We were told that it has to be about the audience. The audience would tell us if it's any good. But the truth is, if you think it's good, that's all that matters. So when do you know something is done? When you feel like it's done. When you've done everything you can to bring the idea to life. So final takeaways about The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. I think this book is a must read for any digital entrepreneur or just creator in general. Anybody that feels a calling to make content. And I think for me, this is process of creating, the seed phase, the experimenting phase, and then the crafting phase is something that I'm going to be doing moving forward. And more importantly, the thing that got me out of my creative rut with this book is actually not caring about the end result. Once we put this video together, once we put it out, that's enough, is detaching from the outcome. I want to know your thoughts, right? This is a conversation. I want to hear your thoughts about what are some things that you're going to take away and add to your own creation process. And if you too are like me, is sick of creating content that doesn't actually matter, matter, and you're actually going to be putting your best foot forward to make the best possible content that you can.